So when we're young, we promise ourselves that when we become parents, we're gonna be the cool parents. We're gonna be the parents that our kids fall in love with and that other parents envy just because we're so cool and we dress cool and everything's cool. And then we get older and we start having kids and we realize that being cool isn't so cool. It's not the greatest way to be a parent. But what I see now is that although there's so many different modalities of raising kids, there's all sorts of books and all sorts of advice, people typically fit into two categories. You're either really strict or you're really loose. And I just want to say that neither one is a great long-term strategy. If you want to figure out how to exist in the happy milieu, then please watch this video. Let's get into how you can raise your kids with loving discipline. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Whole Goals. It is my job, Andrew Love, as the founder of Whole Goals, to help you reclaim your mind, heart, body, and soul so that you can become an unstoppable force of good in this world. How important it is as a parent to be that force of good for your kids. But it's really hard to figure out the balance between how much to discipline your kids and how loose to be with your kids. When you're growing up, I don't know about you, but definitely when I was looking at my friends' parents, the more strict the parents were, the more I felt like, oh, those parents suck. I don't like those parents. I like these parents over here that let their kids do whatever they want. Now that I have a little bit of hindsight and I can see how my friends turned out over the years, and now as a parent myself, I can really see that the loose parents, the parents that just let their kids do whatever, I'm talking about some of them let their kids do drugs, drinking, do whatever they want, those kids really went through hell. And also the kids that had super strict parents oftentimes ended up going into drinking drugs, really going wild because they were so restricted their whole adolescence that when they finally had an open opportunity to do whatever they want, they dove headfirst into crazy town. What is your role as a parent? That's the first question to ask. What is my role as a parent? Because a lot of parents are constantly just reacting. Oh, my kid's doing this, I need to stop them. Or, oh, they need to do more of this. They need more academics. They need more sports. They need more involvement in whatever. And these are not part of a greater plan when you're just reacting. If you really step back for a second and say, what is my role as a parent? Ideally, I'm guessing it's to produce a happy human being, a happy child, so that later in life they can be capable and able to produce happiness for themselves. So that means that all of the things that you're doing is to help them to be well-adjusted, happy mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So on the one extreme, being loose, you have to understand that there's so many parents, and it really makes me so frustrated because these parents are insecure when it comes to their own kids. They're kind of like they want to be their kid's best friend and they don't want to hurt their feelings and they don't want to look uncool around their kids. It's like, what are you, a teenager? This is your kid. Don't try to be cool, try to be real, try to be sincere, try to love them. But there's definitely this movement where parents are thinking like kind of ahead and they're like, when my kid grows up, I really hope that we can just chill and just be buddies, you know? And there's definitely space for that. That's an important thing to happen, that eventually when you're both older that you're kind of more like friends than a parent and child. That's a stage in development, but not when they're kids. When they're kids, they need guidance. And if you look at the way society's going largely, there's so many parents that are abdicating responsibility and they're just saying, I don't know, let the kids figure it out for themselves, and that's a disaster. You're cutting them off from all the wisdom that history has produced. We have this wealth of lessons that we can represent as parents if we just step up and allow our kids to connect with us and to give them guidance and say, actually running on the street's not a great idea. Here's why. So that's the first thing, is to be just your kid's buddy is never gonna work out. Your kids are gonna turn into tyrants if they don't have any discipline, if they don't have any rules. If everything's just kind of relativized, they are going to be miserable, I guarantee you. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if you are always creating rules for your kid, if it's all laws, then your kid is basically in a prison and they are going to at some point revolt, or they're just gonna stay a slave to these rules that you've set up for them, but they're never going to be owners of their life. And that's the important bit right here, is if kids are on this side with no rules, no discipline, then they are not owners. They have no boundaries. They have no container for all of their greatness, right? If you want to be a really good athlete, you need a disciplined routine. If you want to be a really good spouse, you need to be disciplined in how you love somebody. These are all things that you're meant to learn as you grow up. But if you only have rules, then it's the rules that are keeping you from doing bad things instead of owning doing the right things. Why should I not stab my friend? Why should I not steal? Why should I not cheat? That's a much more important question to answer than just obeying rules. You see that obeying rules makes you kind of like a servant. It makes you a slave in your own life. To be a truly free person, you need to understand why you would do something and why you wouldn't do it, and own your commitment to how you live your life. So I'm gonna bring it all together now. The best way to raise your children is to constantly converse with them and explain to them your decision-making process and get down in the dirt with them. If you have a rule that you'd like to present, that it's not just the law, but it's the law with love, together with love. For example, just this morning, my kids were about to go to school, and my one son wanted to go in a t-shirt and shorts, and the seasons just changed and it's now freezing cold outside. I was like, bro, you're not going outside like that. And he's like, I want to go outside like that. And I was like, look outside. There's no sun, it's raining, it's freezing cold outside. He's like, well, I want to wear this. And I was like, okay, well, let's go outside for a second and let's experience the outside. And it was pretty cold. And he's like, all right, well, yeah, I'll wear a sweater. And he's like, okay, cool. You're probably gonna need pants too. And he's like, well, I don't want to wear pants. And I was like, well, think about this. You're gonna be outside, you're gonna be doing sports. Like, how comfortable are you going to be if you're just in shorts? And he's like, yeah, that's a good point. He eventually wore pants, right? But it was his choice. But it was under my guidance. I don't want to force him. I'm not going to yell at him and force him to wear these things. You know, if worst case scenario, maybe he just needs to suffer in the cold, you know, in t-shirt and shorts. But at the end of the day, it needs to be his decision. It's much more likely going to be a good decision that works out for the both of you if you can take the time to explain the wisdom that you're trying to impart together with the love of this is for your best interest. Especially for big decisions in life, it's really important to sit down with them and let them chew over these topics of, say, you know, why they shouldn't have candy all the time, or if they're really stuck on video games. Like our kid, we have constant conversations about video games because they want to play all the time, and I realize that the more they play video games, the worse they are at connecting with each other. They treat each other like crap. So I explain this to them and we talk about why they're not playing video games. But it's a conversation. You see, the conversation is where the magic happens. Again, if they're doing it just because it's a rule, or if they're doing whatever they want, they're not learning the lesson. The real lesson is in the connection that they're receiving through you. So if you make the space to have these conversations, to really get into their life and explain why you make the decisions you make and why it's good for them, not try to coerce them, but explain and to try to hear their opinions and to work through it. That's the real magic, is that you're forming a bond, and that bond, if it's sincere, will never tear. It might stretch, but will never tear. That bond will be eternal because they will know that their heart is safe in your presence. And at the end of the day, they'll always come back to you when they have questions. And that's what you want. Not to be the cool parent or the disciplinarian, but to be the loving parent who provides them space, but who also provides them with discipline, put together with love. If you do that, then regardless of what you're going through, it will yield closeness. Your kids will ultimately do the best thing for them and for society, and you'll be raising ultimately a happy, healthy child. I hope this was helpful. Please leave comments below. Have you tried talking with your kids? Is it a difficult thing for you? As always, it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you in the next video.